I'm tying the hook point up Gurgler. It's a redfish fly, saltwater. It's unique in that the hook sits facing up on the surface. So when you're popping this fly on the flats, you can go over the seagrass. Most Gurglers are tied with the hook point down and you're catching into all that stuff. But this one will let you float over it as best as you can. And I've had good luck with it. This is the larger size. You can tie them smaller, but the larger one will be a bit easier. So that's what we're gonna tie right now. So one of the unique aspects of this fly is that you have to have a hook with the right size shank and enough of a gap that you can put this 5mm foam on there and still have the ability to hook the fish. So the hook that I'm using is called the Eagle Claw L253, and it's supposed to be a really strong hook. I haven't really tested it to the limits, but lots of guys up on the East Coast catch really large striper on it, so it seems like a very strong hook. And the main body is going to be this foam cutout that I make. I punch them out and put the eyes on there and everything. I think I'll have them for sale on my website, or you can try to cut them out and make them yourself. It's just 5mm craft foam. But we'll go ahead and get started. So we're going to put hook in the vise here and just lay down a thread base to start. It doesn't have to be anything crazy because we'll be covering it up as we go. So we're going to start off with this lucent wrap, but really any synthetic that you like you can use. This is from Montana Fly Company. And so the nice thing about this is it's strung together, so you can easily bunch it and line up all the bars, and you don't have to mess around with the Sharpie after you're done. But basically, you're going to take about 2/3 of it sticking off the end and tie it on the back of the hook. You want to really get down towards the bend so that you can get as much of the fly off the back of the hook as you can. And now we're going to fold over that excess, and you want the folded over part to be about halfway up the longest part of the synthetic that you just folded. And now I'm going to take a little, I think this is a pheasant feather, but anything that's kind of shrimpy marabou, and this is going to help you make those little shrimp legs coming off the front. But you're just going to tie in. Marabou's a bit easier. With these, you have to use a couple of feathers to get enough on there, and you're just pretty much matching up where you folded over that synthetic. Now we're gonna flip it over, and this is some elastic string. I think they use it for bracelets, but you can also use lots of the fly tying shops have a similar leg material. That's going to be a little long, but these are going to be the antenna. So you'll loop it on your thread, pull it onto the top, and then wrap it up to the bend of the hook, and bring one antenna on either side, and then kind of lock them off right there. Now we're going to flip it back over and use some nylon coated wire, and we're going to tie that in on the bottom, because this is going to be what we slip the little beads on that help flip it over and keep it hook point up. So we'll wrap that right up to behind the marabou that we tied in. And now we're going to take this brush. So this brush is one that I make myself. You can use pretty much any shrimpy redfish brush that you can buy on the market, but this one's got all the legs in the front, and then it's tapered towards the rear, and it just makes it easier for me to trim. And we're going to go ahead and tie that in. Okay, so now we can take this out of the vise. And we're gonna put the body on. And I kind of like to measure right behind this fanned out tail, put that right behind the hook eye, and see where the hook shank lines up. And that's kind of going to give you an idea of where to stab it through. But you can practice with it and see what you like. And it depends, if you're making them yourself, it'll be different from where I'm putting it in, but that looks fine to me. And you're going to put it back in the vise. And that'll line up pretty good. So now we're going to take one wrap of the brush, and we're still not wrapping over that body yet, but we're wrapping that right in front of it. Okay, so now we're going to put our first wrap going over the body, and I put a little bit of E6000 on top of the shank before I do that. And this really helps seal it all together. Since the body's on top of the hook, it does have a tendency to get torn up, but you'll see how we coat it with E6000 to really make it very strong and durable. So you'll bring your thread back behind the body, and we've pinched it against the hook shank right here. And now your brush is going to go up over that body. And this is going to add to the durability as well and let you pull pretty tight down into that foam. And now you're going to wrap under the body as you go back. And just put 3 or 4 wraps and then capture the brush. Okay, once you've done that, you're going to flush cut the brush right underneath the body. And then we're going to flip it over and take that little piece of wire that we tied in and bend it back. And make sure you're kind of brushing all the material through it as you do that. And now we're going to slide 2 little beads. These can be brass, stainless steel, just whatever you have. It doesn't take anything special. These are probably 3.3 millimeter if I had to guess. But you can use the 4 millimeter if you want to. And so you're going to capture that, and those beads are held off the shank by a little ways. And that helps to keel the fly and flip it over without having to add a ton of weight. So we'll capture, I like to fold the wire back so it's not going to pull out. Every time my buddies fish this, they like to grab it by the beads and try to pull it out of the fish's mouth, so you kind of have to bulletproof that. So we'll flip it back over, add a little bit of the E6000 just under the body, like we did on the front, and then capture over the top of the body again and make that segmentation. So another nice thing, as you're tying the fly, you're making these segments of the shrimp body, and afterwards they're already made for you. All we're going to do is trim it flat and color them, and you don't have to worry about how you bar the fly itself. So we're going to wrap the brush over the top in that groove that we made with the thread and cinch it really tight in there and put 2 or 3 more wraps. And capture it again. So you want to leave about a hook eye's distance between where you're going to finish the fly and this last wrap. And again, we're just going to flush cut the top here. Put a little bit of E6000 on the underside. Fold all the material forward and then capture it. And right here is where we're going to flare this tail up a little so that it'll pop. So I like to capture it, take the last wrap of the brush into that space. This brush ended up a little bit small. that's okay. And snip it off right back here. And now I'll go back over the tail one more time, and I'll pull it up as I'm cinching down, and it kind of flares that foam up. And then if you put a few thread wraps right in front of it, it should help it stand up a little bit. Gonna go ahead and whip finish. And now we still got a little more work to do to get this fly where we want it. So we're gonna cut flush on the top on each of those segments, and then do a flush cut down the side as well on both sides. And I like to come from the top. I like to go from the top down to make that cut, because if you go from the bottom, it's easy to take way too much material. So it's still a little bit too dense at the back here. So I'm gonna flip it over, and I like to put my scissors at an angle and just rotate it right at the back here and cut all that pretty short. Now once you've done that, you can kind of clean up some of these stragglers on the top and back of the fly. And then we're going to take our Sharpie, and all you have to do is color in that material that you wrapped over the top, and that's going to make the segments for you. And so one of the cool parts of this fly is that the antenna, we're going to thread them through the foam so that they come out the nose of the fly, just like on a real shrimp. So I have a little needle that has a piece of 4-pound monofilament in a loop off the back of it. And we're going to go under the face of the shrimp and slide that hook or that needle. And I use a little pair of pliers, but we're going to slide that all the way through the foam. And this is kind of, if you're working on being a doctor, this helps you with your sutures. But you slide that all the way through there. And then you make sure you find the right antenna, slide it through that monofilament loop, and pull them all the way through. There we go. We'll do the same thing on the other side. Just take your needle, and I like for it to come about 1/8 of an inch out from the nose of the point of the nose right there. We'll take the other antenna, slide it through that loop. And so now you can line those up and cut them off so they're both the same size. And so the last thing that we're going to do to really help improve the durability of this fly, when I make these bodies, I already put a sealant and all this other stuff after I airbrush them. But if you take some E6000 and put it, I like to put some on the top of the tail, down into this little groove right here, and then along the back all the way up past the bend of the hook. You can just use a little popsicle stick or something like that, and you just spread it out a little bit and try to cover a good portion of that foam. You can cover the eyes a little bit. Just try not to get it in the material too much, but all along the back of the fly here. And then I like to take a little bit and roll it on the face like this and just try to keep it out of the hook eye. And then once that sets up, which only takes a few minutes, it's going to be really, really durable. But yeah, that's how you tie the hook point up gurgler.